Good afternoon. We are bringing you updates on the situation in Ukraine on ST Live. Good to have you with us. Russia's war on Ukraine is now into its 8th day. Russian forces have taken the first major Ukrainian city, the strategic port of Kherson, on the Black Sea. Here's what we know of the fighting elsewhere. The Ukrainian capital, Kiev, has come under more heavy shelling as Russian forces step up their offensive. Massive explosions have been heard in the past few hours. Russian paratroopers landed in Ukraine's second city, Kharkiv, following several days of bombardment that has killed or wounded dozens of civilians. The strategically important seaport city of Mariupol in the southeast is also reportedly surrounded by Russian troops. Russia has, however, given its first official accounting of its casualties. 498 soldiers have been killed and more than 1,500 wounded. As Russia continues its missile attacks on residential areas in several cities, Ukraine is facing a humanitarian crisis. The UN Human Rights Office says 227 civilians were killed in the first 5 days of the invasion. The organization also said it believes the true death toll is considerably higher because of reporting delays. It is estimated now that up to 1 million people have fled the country, making it one of the worst refugee crises in Europe for decades. The United Nations General Assembly has overwhelmingly voted to reprimand Russia for invading Ukraine and demanded that Moscow stop fighting and withdraw its military forces.
Today, we call on Russia to stop its unprovoked, unjustified, unconscionable war.
In an historic meeting, the United Nations General Assembly overwhelmingly voted to reprimand Russia for invading Ukraine and demanded that Moscow stop fighting and withdraw its military forces.
The General Assembly has spoken.
The resolution Wednesday was supported by 141 of the Assembly's 193 members and passed in a rare emergency session called by the UN Security Council. As Ukrainian forces battle to defend itself in the face of a Russian invasion that has forced hundreds of thousands to flee. The last time the Security Council convened an emergency session of the General Assembly was in 1982. Russia's UN envoy denied Moscow was targeting civilians and accused Western governments of pressuring Assembly members to pass the resolution. Russia was joined by Belarus, which has served as a launch pad for Russian invasion forces, Eritrea, North Korea, and Syria in voting against the resolution. 35 members abstained, including China.
Amidst international condemnation, one country in Asia is trying to find its balance between Moscow and the West. India has once again abstained on the UN Security Council resolution slamming Russia's aggression against Ukraine. For more on this, the Straits Times' associate editor Ravi Velloor joins me now. Ravi, since the start of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, India has maintained a neutral stance. Is it solely due to India's close defense and energy ties with Russia, or is there more to its considered and perhaps even strategic position?
Well, Lynn, as you're aware, that India is not the only country that has been careful or abstained, even in the vote overnight. The Chinese also abstained, and so did the Vietnamese and the Laotians. And as did several countries in Southern Asia, including Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and even Pakistan, if I'm not mistaken. So India is not the only country, but it is a significant country that has abstained from voting against Russia. And, so that it's important to take note of that. But you're right, there are several strategic considerations that play into the Indian calculus. And those start with defense, because the Indian military is heavily dependent on Russian arms. Its strike fighters are the Sukhoi 30s and, overwhelmingly Russian. The main battle tanks are Russian. Submarines are Kilo-class submarines, 8 of them of Russian make. But beyond that, there are certain technologies that the Russians have been giving to India, which have not been available to them from elsewhere. I'm talking about the nuclear submarine project. And the critical part of the nuclear submarine is the nuclear reactor. And the Russians have helped India with those reactors. Likewise, on their cruise missiles, the BrahMos, which is now being sold to the Philippines, it's co-designed with Russia. And the BrahMos 2, which is the hypersonic cruise missile, is currently under development with the Russians. So that kind of technology has thus far not been available to India so easily from anywhere else. And the Russians, more critically, have been willing to use their veto power in the Security Council on India's behalf, almost on demand, and particularly on key issues like Kashmir. So these are the calculations that play into the Indian mindset. But let me close with one point on this. If you look at the General Assembly vote overnight, the United Arab Emirates, which abstained earlier, this time has voted against the Russians. So my own feeling is that the current Indian position is that it will abstain on these votes, but if the war drags on too much and the odium and the bad odor of this whole thing lasts too much, I don't think even the Indians will be able to resist coming out with a firmer, stronger stand against Russia.
Okay, Ravi, yesterday we heard about China possibly playing a mediation role in this. What are the prospects of India brokering a peace deal, and will India do it?
Well, I'm sure that this is a subject that possibly came up when Prime Minister Modi spoke with President Zelensky of the Ukraine. But do remember, Lynn, that India's say in these matters is very limited. It is still a middle power. It is not a near superpower the way China is. Its connections to Moscow are nowhere near as strong as the Chinese connection is, especially after the recent summit between Xi Jinping and Putin. And I think this is something even the Ukrainians have clearly shown that if they want outside mediation, they'd go to the Chinese for it. And I think Wang Yi is trying in that direction.
So at the recent ST roundtable on the Ukraine crisis, Professor Kishore Mahbubani talked about avoiding the worst outcomes, quoting Henry Kissinger in a 2014 article in the Washington Post, and I quote, "Find a solution that neither humiliates Russia nor humiliates Ukraine. In your opinion, what will it take for Russia to agree to a ceasefire?"
Well, I think at the very minimum that their security concerns are taken into account. And these are, I think they listed it out. And Putin has put forth two draft treaties, one directed at the United States and one towards Europe. And I think a good part of that will have to be taken into account. Possibly the guarantees will have to be very firm, firm enough for Putin to accept and to sell to his nation. So, I would expect at the very minimum that, he's guaranteed that there will be no expansion of NATO into the Ukraine. It's possible at a pinch that he might be okay with Ukraine joining the European Union. But I certainly do not see Ukraine in its current geography being allowed to join NATO by Vladimir Putin.
Thank you very much for those valuable insights. The Straits Times' associate editor and Asia columnist, Ravi Velloor there. The International Criminal Court has confirmed that it has begun investigation on possible war crimes committed by Russia in Ukraine. 38 countries have formally referred reports of the atrocities. This is the largest referral in the history of the ICC. Among the countries is the UK, and here's Prime Minister Boris Johnson speaking earlier in Parliament, stating Britain's support.
We have seen already from Vladimir Putin's regime in the use of the munitions that they have already been dropping on innocent civilians, Mr. Speaker, in my view, already fully qualifies as a war crime. And I know that the ICC prosecutor is already investigating, and I'm sure the whole House will support that.
Now, meanwhile, according to the New York Times, China had asked Russia in early February not to invade Ukraine during the Winter Olympics. The report said senior Chinese officials had some level of knowledge about Russia's plans to attack Ukraine before Moscow launched the operation last week. China has dismissed the report as speculation without any basis and added that the story was an attempt to smear China. Chelsea owner Roman Abramovich says he is planning to sell the football club in response to possible sanctions against Russian oligarchs. In a statement on the Premier League club's website, he said he had made an incredibly difficult decision which pains him. The Russian will not ask for any loans to be repaid and said proceeds of the sale would be donated to war victims. Reports say Abramovich has already received offers for Chelsea and that he values the club at as much as £3 billion. And as always, you can follow the latest updates and reactions on the Ukraine crisis at straitstimes.com. And remember to hit subscribe to stay informed. Do activate the bell icon on YouTube and you will be notified the next time we go live. I'm Lin Li Fu. Thanks for watching.